Welcome to the Late Night Race Review. Are Williams now not shit? Zach Brown has a new bestest boy. Yuki left looking over his shoulder. And apparently Lewis Hamilton still drives for a Formula 1 team. It's Jeddah. Don't forget to support the podcast by hitting those like, follow and subscribe buttons.
Welcome on into the Late Night Race Review. My name is Aidan Scott, and joining me today is Isidro Gonzalez, and all the way from America and straight out of the pool is our F1 American panelist, Damien Scott. How are you guys doing today?
Good to be here.
Yep, going well, thank you.
That's great to hear. So folks, this weekend we had the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, or for those who play the Formula 1 games, that one track where you're bound to hit the wall multiple times if you have collisions turned off. That's right, we had Jeddah, probably one of the most punishing tracks on the calendar, as it's definitely a track that really showcases what these drivers are capable of, because even the tiniest mistake will find you in the barrier before you can even say Lance Stroll is an absolute bellend. But before we unpack all of the action from the race, let's quickly talk about the qualifying, lads, because there was definitely a couple of major talking points that actually really stood out for me. So diving on in, we have the Max Verstappen beating Oscar Piastri by 0.01 seconds to claim that pole. Isidro, I'll throw this over to yourself first. Walk me through it. How did he do it? Is Super Max back? Because this weekend we did see Red Bull coming into this weekend with some big upgrades to the car.
Yeah, this weekend we saw a glimpse of Red Bull when they have a good day. And the qualifying was actually very good. The battle between Max and Piastri, because the first time Max beat Piastri for 0.001, I think, and then Piastri went again, got the pole, and then Max got the difference, 0.010. And it was great to see the battle between both Piastri and Max. Sadly, Norris couldn't join the party. He decided to hit the shower sooner by crashing against the wall.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting one. I think for any Lando fan, that was definitely a disappointment. But I think definitely, like, looking at that, just that performance, and just even like touching on the upgrades and stuff like that, you can really see that, you know, compare that to Bahrain. Yeah, he had a bit of a difficult weekend, but going into this one, obviously, look, regardless if Max has a good car or if he has a tractor of a machine that he's trying to drive around the circuit, and then obviously when we've seen in Japan, he can do it in any circumstance. But obviously, we've seen that this weekend, the upgrades really did make a big difference going into this one. But then obviously touching on that, when it came to Lando Norris hitting that lovely wall there in Q3, Damien, I know you said that you were briefly watching qualifying. Probably one of the major takes from that session as well was, of course, that Lando Norris crash. And I think, you know, ultimately that started him off in P10 for the start of the race. But Damien, the question I want to ask you is, though, right? Is this it? Is the Lando Norris hype train losing his passengers? What are your thoughts? Because, you know, it's going to get to the stage where, you know, the phrase, sure, look, it's still early days, it's going to wear out. Because, look, let's face it, this guy ultimately has the best car on the grid, and he just keeps on making mistakes. I mean, what's happening here with Lando?
Yeah, in this particular instance, he was pushing, he was going quite well, and I don't know what it was that the past couple of weeks he's I don't know. He's just kind of in a bit of a funk or something like that. You know, his head's just not in the right place, and I didn't expect him to make a big crash like this, or that this kind of issue to crop up with him. He can usually handle these things quite well, but little by little, he's just starting to crack, and it's a little bit too early in the season to be doing that. You know, like, he should be pushing to, you know, get these wins, stay on the, you know, the top of the rung for the qualifying in particular. He's well experienced at this stage. He knows he doesn't really have to push it that hard to get that McLaren, you know, on the first couple of rows. So it was a little bit disappointing to see him do that. It's probably too early in the season to use that cliche to write him off. But yeah, past couple of weeks he's not been in the right headspace, I think, and it's beginning to show. I don't know what's going to get him out of that. You know, Miami might be a nice little kind of, the week off we have in between might be a nice little break, and straight back into Miami then the week after. So maybe the week off might do him some good if he gets a bit of a break in there somewhere. But yeah, a little too early, I think, to write him off. But yeah, he's starting to show signs that Oscar is really pushing him hard this season. And he knows Oscar is a big competitor. So yeah, it's wide open at McLaren for sure.
Yeah, no, I know that obviously, he doesn't want to take the title away from Fernando Alonso. It's that sort of F1 meme that Alonso is always the rookie of every single season. But it feels like, and I actually seen a comment on this on social media. I seen that someone mentioned that it seems that Lando Norris approaches the start of every single season as a rookie. He starts off kind of like in rookie sort of ways. Isidro, do you think that's a sort of a way to look at that? Because I kind of tend to notice that myself. Like, I know obviously McLaren, like with these sort of regulations, they had it difficult at the very beginning. Obviously in 2023 they started to kind of get the hand on the whole regulations, and they started to put in a little bit of performance, started to get some nice sort of results, and then 2024, that's when we really see them take off. But I mean, is that a sort of a correct phrase to sort of say about Lando Norris? Like, is he approaching the start of every season as a rookie? Because, like, I mean, he's not a rookie anymore. He's a professional F1 driver. He's been around the block many times, and he's been battling against Max Verstappen. What's your opinion on him?
I think he's feeling the pressure at the moment because he wants to be, from last year that he was fighting really hard for the championship that went to Max, and this year he wants to fight for the championship, but at the same time there's the pressure from Piastri, his teammate, and definitely Piastri at the moment he's showing that he has what it takes to be a champion. He makes no mistakes so far. He has excellent drives, and I think that is taking a toll on Lando, and that's not good because it's the fourth race so far, and he should be in a better headspace. I think he needs to spend more time with Vettel. Maybe Vettel and Lando can share Max plane to Miami, and they all talk in a group and see if they can help Lando overcome this. Because if Lando wants to be world driver, championship winner, he needs to step up and be a bit more cool and calm and focus. And I think at the moment he's none of that, and it shows. He started well, but he's already 10 points behind Piastri.
That is true. Like, going out of that race 10 points behind Piastri is it's starting to show those signs that he's under a lot of pressure, definitely, for sure. And like, just even mentioning there, like that plane with Vettel and Lando, that would definitely be an interesting conversation. But talking about someone who probably does need a little bit of help, that brings me on to my last point that I kind of noticed, not just only in quali, but going into the main race as well. Lewis Hamilton. I mean, if you're a Ferrari fan like myself, it's kind of business as usual, regardless if you're doing well or if your team is just not performing. But I noticed Lewis Hamilton's performance in quali, just barely making it out of Q1 to get into Q2, and then the same thing again, just barely making it out of Q2 and then getting into Q3. And then this is another weekend again where I could be wrong in saying this, but like, I read that Ferrari brought another set of upgrades to their car. And I mean, for a guy who's been in the championship for a very, very long time, and I know obviously each set of regulations can change and cars can change, and sometimes you need to kind of get to grips with things. But, Isidro, like, I want to bring this back to yourself again. Like, when it comes to Hamilton, I mean, what's happening there as well? Like, Damien actually raised a very good point there last episode. We were talking about the fact that, like, the McLaren drivers and the Ferrari drivers seem to be very similar in terms of just like what the thinking process is there, or just how they approach every weekend. I mean, you have Oscar Piastri, as you mentioned there, cool, calm and collected. He gets his head down, he just gets into the race, he gets things done. Same with Charles. But like, when you look at Lando and then you look at Hamilton, it just seems another weekend, another sort of, that they're just complaining about the car or they're making mistakes. What's going on with Hamilton? I mean, he ultimately came to Ferrari to try and get another championship under his belt. Like, Fred Vasseur brought him in there. I'm not going to say that he guaranteed him another championship, but that was really, or ultimately, the move that he wanted to do to get another championship. Like, what is going on with Hamilton?
I think the I'll imagine that the fact that they can see the Mercedes finishing ahead of him in every single race
Mm.
sure makes him think, oh, maybe I did a mistake. But then again, Ferrari, they can, I mean, this weekend, they were bad in the qualification, but they were actually, from Charles' perspective, very good on the race. And I think it's that Ferrari from qualifying to race, they need to just join forces and decide if they want to be good on both or bad on the Saturday and good on the Sunday or vice versa. And I think it's that Ferrari's not a good team if you don't like to suffer, basically. And
Yeah.
Charles has been there enough that he's already know how to cope on with all the mistakes that Ferrari does.
Mhm.
Hamilton is just in the beginning of the pain that is coming for the next 17 races. I think he just needs to understand that Ferrari, you can have a good weekend or a bad weekend, just not a good weekend all weekends.
Yeah, definitely. And like, you could see him like over the course of the weekend, like he was complaining about like the rear tires. He was just complaining about certain, aspects of the car. But Damien, what are your thoughts? Like, I know you're kind of a Mercedes fan. Again, I know you say you've got a soft spot for them, but do you think Lewis, he's made a mistake going to Ferrari, or is this a kind of like, oh, it's still early days, oh, we have to give him a couple more races? I mean, that phrase is going to get very old very quickly.
I don't think it's ever a mistake to sign for Ferrari, right? They're legendary team. Like everybody wants to wear that red suit. Yeah, they're iconic. If he turned it down, he would have been very silly boy to do that. He was at Mercedes for what, 10, 11, 12 seasons, whatever it was. Yeah. And you get used to, you even think about your own career, your own workplace, you get used to all the people you're working with, the way you do things, the way they set up the car, how the weekend works, how the week in between the races works, so you get very set into that that mode with an employer, and yeah, he's been doing that for a decade. Coming to Ferrari, it's a different culture, it's a very different way of doing things mechanically, how they do things during the week, how the team approaches it, so it is a big change, and no matter how experienced you are, there's going to be a transition period. There's no two ways about it. I think the biggest thing he was talking about was the level of engine braking. The difference between the Ferrari and the Mercedes. Ferrari seemed to depend on that a little more. I think he was also talking about the material that the actual physical disc brakes were made of as well. So yeah, that's something he has to get used to, right? It's if you're used to driving one type of car and you jump into another one, it's like if you even get like a rental car yourself on holidays, it always feels a bit weird, right? To jump into something you're not used to. The buttons are in different places. The gearbox feels different, whatever, So he's a very experienced driver, but it's still going to take him time to kind of get over that. If anybody's capable of doing it, I think it's him. So it's still early doors. There's, signs that he's doing okay. He's doing some good qualifying. He's starting to get into positions. He's starting to find his feet a little bit there. So yeah, I think in the long run he'll be okay. But yeah, it's still taking a little bit of time for him to get used to that car.
So what you're saying is that maybe between now and Miami, he needs to take a trip down to Halfords to get some spare parts for that car, or possibly beg to Toto if he can have some spare parts for Mercedes to get that car up and running.
That's it. Even his old seat or something like that could be annoying him the way he's sitting in the car, whatever it might be. But yeah, it's just going to take time, and yeah, even by the end of the season, he mightn't even be to full grips with the car, but they have to give him this year to really find his feet, and we may see a different driver next year, but yeah, he's still a fantastic driver. Let's see how long it takes him.
That's true, because a lot can happen in the space of a season. Like I know obviously when you look at Checo Perez, like he was contracted for another couple of seasons with Red Bull, and then ultimately he was let go, and that would be an interesting one if Ferrari decided to do that with Hamilton. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe another season or two under his belt might be the way to go. But ultimately, though, that brings us on to the main race, and obviously, Of course, we're going to pull the trigger here. We're just going to dive straight on into it. The probably the biggest talking point of the whole race, and everyone wants to know our thoughts on it. Lap 1, turn 1, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri. Guys, I want to know your thoughts on this. I have my own opinions, but I want to hear your thoughts. Isidro, I'll bring you in first. That 5-second penalty. First of all, I want to ask you, do you think Max deserved it? And second of all, should they have gone with the strategy that they took with going into the pits, taking the 5-second penalty by, waiting to change the tires and so forth, taking the penalty in the pits and then going off? Or should they have actually just swapped the places back and let Max try and attack Oscar on the track? What's your thoughts?
I think the 5 seconds are well deserved. Max was on the wrong on that third one. And I think the strategy that they went with, regardless, the result will be the same. I don't think they had the pace this week to get Piastri. Even though the qualifying shows a fast car, in race we could see that Piastri was far faster and far better than the Red Bull. So I don't think the strategy would matter in this. The only thing that I think would happen was if Max started from the second and Piastri got the pole, I think it would be a different race, because Max would definitely have the race line, who was in the right position, the third one, and Piastri would be either break or go out, and we would see Verstappen win the race. Because the pole in Jeddah, I don't think it's the best position to win the race, especially when you have a McLaren like you have today. So for me, I don't think the strategy would matter. The moment Max was out, it was out.
Yeah, I think starting P2 there, that's definitely the better start off in Jeddah, regardless, because if you get a good start there, you can block that corner. But ultimately, you could find yourself in a situation like that again, where you're potentially forcing someone off the track. But again, look, if you're a Red Bull fan, you're definitely you're gonna try and fight that as much as you can and say, oh yeah, no, Max didn't deserve that. He was pushed off the track. And the one thing I want to raise as well, and of course, Damien, I'm going to bring you in because I want to hear your thoughts on this as well. But like the one thing I noticed as well is that these kind of situations, obviously this has happened loads of times. It always happens in any form of motor racing. It's always going to be a thing. But when it comes to the FIA in Formula One, there has been situations like this that have happened in the past where a 5-second penalty has been dished out, which we did see this weekend. But then in other races, it doesn't happen. I know obviously like each season regulations change, and of course, look, people can interpret them in certain ways and bend the rules to kind of give them the advantage. But like this has happened many a time before. Penalties have been given out. Penalties haven't been given out for the exact same situation. And it just feels, I'd say more than likely, it's just an inconsistency on the FAA, because I know obviously they have stewards who come in and come out and they've all these different opinions or whatever. But it just seems like there's a lack of consistency there. But Damien, what is your thoughts on the Verstappen Piastri turn 1 incident?
I think he got off very, very lightly. The 5 seconds was, wasn't that much of a punishment at all, to be honest. They should have told him to give it back right away. And for every lap he didn't give it back, add on another 5 seconds. It was, he was like, oh, I got pushed over wide. He didn't leave me space, Piastri had the corner. It was his corner, and that was it. He ran wide, obviously, so he wasn't going to crash. But, he put the front of his car in that position, and he was at fault, essentially. And then to gain the advantage that he did going out of the corner, it was pretty cut and dry from my perspective anyway. He knew what he was doing. He's it's Max Verstappen, right? He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing with Christian Horner bringing out the printed photographs, at the end was just ridiculous as well. Like, it's like in soccer when they're looking at drawing the lines with VAR. When was the ball kicked? Christian, when was this picture taken? At exactly what point? It was a little bit pathetic, I think, from him and Red Bull. But you're going to defend your team, right? But you still have to, at the end of the day, be somewhat factual in what you're trying to defend. yeah, he had to give it back. And to be honest, I think not giving it back is probably been more of a detriment to him. He could have, had a better race if he just given it back and got on with it, because the 5-second penalty meant that he came out behind Oscar during that pit stop. I can't remember which lap it was, but yeah, that was it. He was done for after that. So if he just given it back, he could have raced right there and then. He was on his tail, right? So
yeah.
He should have given it.
And you think ultimately that was the better option, just give the place back instead of going into the pits. Like, just touching on what Isidro said there, like you kind of look at the performance even after he came out of the pits and trying to catch Piastri. Like he did have a little bit of difficulty, like he was behind, was it Norris at one stage or was it Leclerc? He was behind somebody trying to catch Piastri. But like, do you think ultimately like that should have been the better decision? Just give the place back and then try and catch him on track? Because we all know, we've seen it a couple of times from a couple of different drivers, that last corner DRS situation, like all the drivers do that at Jeddah, so like do you think that ultimately was the best way to go?
There's lots of places to pass there, right? So and DRS in particular, we saw lots of positions going back and forth. I think we had was it Norris and Hamilton were kind of pinging back and forth for a couple of laps, so the opportunities are there to pass, absolutely. So he would have been right behind him and probably made better sense strategically just to give it back and then just race. Anything can happen in that pit stop. They can touch the car too early, and they have to reserve it, or they get another penalty, whatever the punishment might be. So you're kind of leaving it open to things to go wrong, and it's out of your hands then,
Exactly. Well, look, we'll put it to bed. Everyone, who's listened to the episode today, definitely let us know your thoughts in the comments wherever you're listening to this. But look, we'll put it to bed. We have our opinions. We know Max was a bad boy. He got a slap on the wrist. But moving on from that, and we'll quickly go into it. Gasly and Tsunoda, who's at fault? Let's quickly divulge that. What happened there? Isidro, I'll bring you in first there.
I think it was just a normal incident, but if I have to point fingers, I'm going to point to Gasly. Tsunoda had no idea that Gasly would be in that position. So even though it was, I think we could see Tsunoda touching Gasly, I don't think it was Tsunoda's intention to crash into Gasly. Especially, we know how Yuki and Gasly, they're best mates. So Yuki would never. I'm pretty sure that Yuki went straight to Gasly and begged for forgiveness. But if I have to point fingers, I'll say Gasly. But I think it was just an incident. There was no bad faith in that move.
Yeah. And Damien, your thoughts, because I feel you might have a different opinion on this one.
I agree it was a racing incident, but I think Tsunoda, he had a clear view of what was in front of him, and he tipped him in the back. It was the back right tire, Yuki's front left, and Gasly's back right, and he tipped him and spun him around, and racing incident, but I'd kind of put it 60-40, to Yuki in terms of who was at fault. Maybe 70-30, but as Isidro said, they're good buddies, so I don't think there was any intention at all. It was a packed corner. There was all the cars were flying around there, so definitely racing incident, but I'm sure Christian Horner had a word with Yuki when he got back to the pits. But I think Yuki's looking strong in that second seat. I think it looks like it's a good choice, but this race, not being able to finish it, only lasted a lap or two, whatever it was. I'm sure Yuki will be kicking himself that he allowed this to happen. But let's see how he goes.
I'm going to bring Isidro back in there because I feel Isidro has a follow-up point to this. Isidro.
Yeah, just to say that I imagine that after the race, Esteban Ocon went straight to Yuki to say, no one touched Gasly unless it's me.
That's my job. But yeah, of course. And I think again as well, going into regardless any weekend, I think Yuki's always going to be under the microscope, especially being in that second seat. But I feel obviously, he's had a couple of moments and stuff like that, but I feel that he's probably the stronger contender there compared to Liam Lawson. And I think realistically, guys, look, let's face it, the reason they crashed was because Liam Lawson was on the track. Let's just pin it on him. If we're going to do any finger pointing, don't point it at them, just Liam Lawson, because he did get a 10-second penalty, which I was which I was ultimately happy with when I seen that. But moving on from that, we did see some pretty much awesome battles on track. We did see that Lando Norris and Hamilton battle there, which I know lasted all of about maybe 2 to 3 laps, but it was the only sign of life that we actually seen out of Lewis Hamilton that entire weekend. In my own opinion, that was the only sign of life that I seen out of that back and forward there. But guys, run me through it. Isidro, bring you in there. What was your thoughts on that?
I think it was, like you're saying, it was probably one of the highlights of the race to see that little battle between Hamilton and Norris, even though it was more kind of gentleman allowing another gentleman to pass, and because there was no fight, especially because Hamilton knew that at the end of the day, Norris, as soon as he got space, he just went away, and that was it. But it was nice until it lasted. But I'm pretty sure Hamilton knew that Ferrari is no match for the McLaren, even in the hands of Lando.
And Damien, what was your thoughts on that? I know you were liking that moment there. I know with our WhatsApp group that we had, I can see you making a few comments on that battle.
Yeah, it was some great race, and it was only unfortunate it lasted only a lap or two, I think it was, or maybe 3 laps. Yeah, it was great racing. They were pinging back and forth. You know, there was a couple of good overtakes. The DRS obviously played a lot in that, but yeah, it was nice to see some actual overtaking and 2 really good drivers going at it. And yeah, it was very gentlemanly, as Cedro said. You know, they did everything by the book. There wasn't any kind of shady tactics or anything like that. So yeah, it was. I think as well, it was a sign that Hamilton was maybe starting to, you know, feel a little bit more comfortable in the car, because he could, you know, start to battle the McLaren, which is obviously a superior car at this point in time. So yeah, it was positive signs for Hamilton from that sense. But yeah, obviously the McLaren just was in a different league to most cars this weekend. So
yeah,
hopefully more of the same to come from Hamilton, and also from obviously from Norris, who want to see him get back in there and fight with Oscar and Max.
Of course, you know, because you do want to see these on-track battles, and especially with what we all know is the superior car this season on track, which is McLaren. But of course, yeah, look, that battle was great, and it was great to see that. But after that, Hamilton reverted back to his complaining as usual on the radio. But look, we'll come back to McLaren and Ferrari very shortly. I'm going to stick with you, Damien, because I know this is definitely the talking point that you want to discuss. Williams, the double points for Williams. Run it through, Damien.
What a weekend.
Mic drop. Williams in the double points. Damien, take it away.
What were they, 8th and 9th? Like, that's, yeah, the previous seasons, just trying to get Albon into 10th to nick a point here and there across the season was kind of the height of what Williams were capable of realistically. So starting to see these guys pick up points every week, even if it is an 8th or a 9th or a 10th, you know, it all adds up as you go through the season. And yeah, I think Carlos is starting to settle in there. He realizes obviously he's not in a Ferrari in terms of the power of the car and how it handles. It's a very different car. Obviously not as fast, but yeah, he's starting to maybe find his comfort level in there, which was great to see. And I think he had a great race overall. But again, if you look at the top 10, you have 2 McLarens, two Williams, and obviously 2 Mercedes. So 6 Mercedes cars basically in the top 10. So obviously Mercedes are doing something right with that power unit. But yeah, I think Sainz is obviously the driver that Williams needed in that lineup. Albon is strong, but you know, he can't carry the whole team by himself. He's had a series of we'll call them drivers in that second seat. We've had Latifi in there, and I do like Logan Sargent, but yeah, he was definitely a bit out of his depth, and others over recent times. So good to see some, looks like stability anyway from Williams. And yeah, double point scoring is a fantastic weekend. You can't ask for too much more than that, even if it is down to the lower edges of the points. But yeah, it was great from them. It was fantastic to see. And I think with Haas doing really well over the past number of races and them not scoring, it kind of brings that battle back into focus for the best of the rest, right? So
Yeah, definitely. I think that the curse of the second Williams seat is now gone. They've finally broken it this weekend.
Yeah, whoever had a couple of $1 million in their bank account was in with a shout over the past decade. So
yeah, of course.
Saying much, but we're in a different place now, thankfully.
Definitely. And I think, look, we can cover Mercedes as well going into that. Like Russell and Antonelli, to be honest, I'm not saying that I don't feel like there's much to talk about. It was just another consistent weekend again from Mercedes. Isidro, what do you think about that? Am I right in saying that another consistent one? Like, I know obviously last weekend, I know Antonelli, he had a bit of a rough one with Bahrain and stuff like that. But this weekend, just another consistent weekend.
Could be better for Mercedes. I think Russell had a few issues and he was complaining about the tires. And I think that because Russell started P3 and it finished P5. So Mercedes was not as strong as it was last week. I think Jeddah was not very good for the tires and eventually Mercedes could not perform that well. I mean, they finished. It's still good because they finished on points, but considering where they started and where they finish, I don't think Mercedes had a great weekend. But then again, I think a lot of teams, they were not expecting that tire degradation, and Mercedes was one of them. But besides that, like Damien was saying, Mercedes engines, they are very good. So I think if they can handle the tire a little bit better down the road, they definitely have two drivers that can lead to the points, and who knows, championship.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And like, as I said, like another great weekend. I know obviously, yeah, they probably would have wanted better, but definitely a good weekend for Mercedes. Now, the one thing I even mentioned as well, before we actually started recording this episode, I mentioned that it actually looked like there was a lot more going on than actually did. Like, I know obviously we had the first turn one drama and then we had the crash and everything. And obviously we had that little sort of battle there with Norris and Hamilton. But other than that, there wasn't really a lot else that actually happened in the race. It was just kind of it was just racing. That was it. It was just get to the finish. There wasn't really anything that was out of the ordinary. Like, yeah, we had a few little DRS battles here and there. Again, Williams kind of, playing with Hajar there with the DRS game at the last corner, like that was really the only other thing. But I think the last thing I want to kind of touch on, and of course, look, we all know Piastri, he had a fantastic race, but Leclerc, like that's one talking point I want to bring up there. Like Leclerc, you look at the difference between him and Hamilton. Like Hamilton struggling, he started P7, finished P7, but Leclerc with the exact same car, and even Lewis said it himself, he has the exact same car, and he even said that we can put that onto P3. So I think even Lewis is probably saying to himself that, look, it's not the car anymore, it's me. But Leclerc, fantastic drive. But guys, break it down for me. Ferrari and Leclerc, what do you think?
Go ahead, Damien.
Yeah, I was just looking at the the kind of results over the past number of weeks, just kind of tracking Ferrari, and you have to hand it to excuse me, to Leclerc. He's been really good the past 3 weeks. I think he's had two fourth places, and now he's got a third. He's on the podium, so he's finding the pace in that car, and obviously he's been in that team a lot longer, and he knows how things work, and he's obviously a bit more comfortable there. So. You're going to have that difference with Hamilton coming into the team. But Piastri obviously is kind of our man of the season so far. But I think in terms of kind of plugging away quietly and getting on the podium or near the podium, Leclerc is, definitely one to watch out for. He's going to be thereabouts when we get to the end of the season.
Yeah.
So I think with Monaco coming up soon as well, be nice to see another win for him at his home race. I think it's after Miami, if I'm not mistaken. That'd be great to see him maybe pick up something in Miami and then something in Monaco. I'm a sucker for a hometown winner for race weekend. So, and I think when he won it the last time out, it was obviously a big emotional moment for him, obviously because of his dad and stuff like that. So. Happy to see him doing well. He had little bits of inconsistencies over the past season or two, and maybe the car probably let him down more often than not. But yeah, nice to see him in the podium positions and are very close to them.
Yeah, no, that I think for sure it'd be good to see him definitely win in Monaco again. And of course, like even last season, seeing that race, it definitely was an emotional one. So hopefully Ferrari can turn their luck around this season, and hopefully these upgrades work for the likes of Miami and going forward. But lastly, the one thing I want to touch on, and of course, look, we have to discuss it, is the fact that Oscar Piastri played an absolute blinder out there on that track yesterday. I mean, from start to finish, of course, yeah, with the whole turn one drama, but going after that, undercutting Max in the pits to eventually bringing home that win. Isidro, what are your thoughts? Because, you know, I feel like this is getting to the stage now, and I know, yeah, we're 4 or 5 races in now, but still, I feel like you can even see it in the faces of the McLaren engineers, the team, like not saying team principals, but you can see the higher ups in McLaren, the gauge, the dial, the whatever you want to call it, the arrow is pointing more towards Oscar Piastri now in terms of a championship win.
Yeah, I agree. And this weekend it showed that McLaren is slowly realizing that Piastri might be a better bet to win the Drivers' Championship. The fact they didn't screw up the strategy, because they could at the point ask Piastri to let Norris take the lead. But the fact that they did and they are supporting Piastri, it shows, and it's good for them that they are making a decision of Oscar has better chances of winning the Drivers' Championship than Lando, because they are not saying, but at least they show this weekend that Piastri might be their bet to win the Drivers' Championship. And no disrespect to Lando, but Piastri has been consistent since lap 1 in Australia.
Yeah, no, for sure. And to be honest, I do like Lando. I am a Lando fan, but I feel like I'm putting more of my eggs into the Piastri basket. I'm going to use that phrase all season long. The eggs are going in the basket. They're going in the Piastri basket for this season. But, you know, ultimately, look, he's proved every weekend now he is the bee's knees. He is the rightful heir to that championship battle, that leads. He's gonna do it. I honestly feel I'm throwing all my money into the Piastri basket this season. I really feel that he is going to take that all the way down to the end. Like, obviously, yeah, he might have a few mistakes here and there, and he might have a couple of tough weekends, but I think ultimately it's going to be Piastri. I think he has that, and I really feel he's going to put that to Max. But moving on, of course, look, he did win the race. It was awesome to see it. Another great weekend for McLaren. But ultimately, the top 10, it did finish off with McLaren, Piastri P1, Verstappen P2, Leclerc coming in there at P3, Norris P4. I know obviously we've discussed Norris a little bit, and it was great to see him come back there from P10 and finish at P4. That was a great recovery drive. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think still, look, we're throwing the eggs in the Piastri basket. We had Russell in P5, Antonelli in P6, Hamilton P7. We had Sainz and Albon there in 8th and 9th. There, Damien's definitely happy with that one. And then lastly, we had Hajar there in P10. And that was great to see him finally getting some points there as well this weekend. It's good to see him getting up there. But that brings us on to our next segment. Guys, I want to know your driver of the day, your dick of the day, and your loser of the day. Damien, I'm going to bring you in.
Yeah, you have to give it to Piastri, right? He's, as you were saying there in the last bit of the last segment, he was just brilliant from beginning to end. And yeah, it's starting to look like his season. So yeah, very close second for me anyway, as we talked about as well, Charles Leclerc. He's starting to bring that consistency, and yeah, with obviously it's a great car, but it's inferior to the McLaren. So to kind of bring that in onto the podium, that was a great race from him. But yeah, has to go to Piastri, I think, this week. Dick of the day, Max didn't give the place back when he should have, and it bit him in the ass in the end. So yeah, tough luck there, Max. And loser of the day, his teammate Yuki. Yeah, I think he was slightly more at fault for that tip into Gasly, and yeah, he took himself out of the race really. So yeah, he was my loser of the day.
Yeah, I think so. And then Isidro as well. Who is your DDL, your driver of the day, your dick of the day, and loser of the day?
My driver of the day will be the second place of Damon. I think Charles Leclerc, he did a great drive with that Ferrari. The tire management was on point. and for me, he's a driver of the day. As a loser of the day, I'm going to say Lando Norris. He crashed in qualifying, and in the race, he did well. He finished P4, I think. But yeah, I think that qualifying was not good. He could be there on the podium. As the dick of the day, I'm going to say the duo, Gasly, Yuki.
Giving it to both of them. Yeah, I like it. I think that's quite apt. I think it's a good conclusion for that race. But I think personally myself, my drive of the day anyway, have to hand it to him, Oscar Piastri. He played a blinder out there. He just from start to finish, he just had such a great race. And to be able to come back there under that pressure from Max Verstappen and just still deliver that win, awesome. Hats off to him. He's an awesome driver, and I hope he brings it all the way to the very end. And then my dick of the day, guys, you know my dick of the day already. Liam Lawson. He's getting it again this weekend. Straight out to Liam, King Dick. There you go. And he also got a 10-second penalty. So well done, Liam. You gave me a good race this weekend. And then finally, my loser of the day is Hamilton. It was just painful. It was just painful to watch that this weekend, just to see him, just like the amount of complaining I've seen about the car and just him there. And like I know like he wants to win another championship, but it just seems like again it's another weekend Lewis Hamilton struggling, and it's just painful to watch. But Lewis Hamilton, I know he started P7 and finished P7, which is great, but I'm giving that to him. But yeah, look, we'll see what happens when it comes to Lewis. Hopefully he'll improve. But look, that finally brings us on to our predictions game. Now, this was a very interesting one because I know obviously we had a few things here, even from last weekend. We were kind of wondering ourselves, top 10 is going to be Antonelli, or who's going to finish outside the top 10. And there is one thing I do want to touch on when it comes to Damien's predictions, because I know he did mention this when it comes to a particular driver. But look, we'll start it off as normal. The guys gave us our predictions. Dave and Owen dropped them in there, and Dave, he went with Norris P1, Piastri P2, and Hamilton in P3. So unfortunately that is a 0 all around. Then his flop was Behrman outside of the top 10, which did actually happen. He did finish in P13, so there we go. He got himself a lovely point. And then also as well, and I think we all played it safe, majorly safe this weekend, Antonelli inside the top 10. That was his surprise. So he got another point there. So that's 2 points for Dave. And then Owen went with Piastri P1. You got a point there. Well done. And then Norris P2. That was a bit unfortunate. And Leclerc in P3. So there we go. And then, of course, he got Behrman outside the top 10. And then also Antonelli inside the top 10. So that's 4 points.
Surprise.
4 points for Owen this weekend. That was a great prediction. Probably one of the best we've had so far. I know, obviously, David, you had that 3-pointer in China, but Owen had a good prediction this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Isidro, what were your predictions?
My predictions were I got Norris P1, Piastri P2, and Russell P3. Disappointment all around. Then, like everyone else, I have the Berman outside top 10 as a flop and Antonelli inside top 10 as a surprise.
Boom.
No surprise, really.
There you go. There you go. All of us playing that Antonelli card this weekend. For my predictions for this weekend, I had Piastri P1. Get in there, Piastri. I knew it was going to happen. Then Hamilton P2. What was I thinking? What was I thinking?
LOL.
Major LOL. So that was a 0-pointer for me. And then Norris in P3. Another LOL right there. Now, I also had Gasly as my flop outside of the top 10. And this brings me on to what you've mentioned here. I've noticed that you have this down on your thing. I mean, DNF doesn't count. Does it really not count? Isidro,
No.
you are the FIA steward here. Does it count?
No, it doesn't count. It doesn't finish the race.
God damn it. Alrighty. So that's 0 points for me. And then I got Antonelli inside the top 10. So that's 2 points for the likes of myself and Damien. Run me through your predictions.
I had Piastri there in P1, Russell P2, and Leclerc P3. So 2 points out of that. I had Gasly as my flop outside the top 10, and I had Antonelli inside the top 10. So I think 3 points for me overall there. Yeah.
That is correct. So, yeah, he definitely had a good weekend this weekend. Me and Isidro again there with the 2 pointers. So, obviously, look, that brings us on to the table. So, we have Dave has 5 points. Owen has 8 points. Isidro has 4. Myself, I've got 4. And then Damien. And Damien coming in there with 9 points. So, it's Damien in the lead there again. Another Max Verstappen weekend for Damien. And then Owen is catching very closely there. He is the Lando Norris. This is the 2024 battle we're having. Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. He's closing in on you, Damien.
Yeah, he came out of nowhere this week with 4 points. He doubled his tally for the season.
Yeah, that was definitely a good one this weekend. But of course, next weekend, in a fortnight's time, we have Miami. So the guys sent us in our predictions. Dave had Norris, Piastri and Verstappen, P1, P2 and P3. His flop is going to be Hajar outside the top 10 and Behrman inside the top 10. I feel like this might be the card that some people might be going with this weekend. But Owen went with Norris, Piastri and Verstappen, P1, P2 and P3. And then Hajar outside the top 10. I think this is actually the card we're actually all going to play. And then Alonso inside the top 10. Isidro, what are your predictions? Let me guess.
My predictions will be Max P1, Piastri P2, and Norris P3.
Ooh, Max.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. What's your flop and surprise? Let me guess.
Be Hajar outside top 10. And the surprise will be Lawson inside top 10.
Are you giving Liam Lawson credit here? Are you serious, yeah. Isidro?
Somebody has to.
No, I am never giving that guy a flop or a surprise. If there's a section there for who gets the dick of the weekend, it's definitely going to be Liam Lawson for me every weekend. We'll just leave that comment there, by the way. But anyway, moving on. My predictions for next weekend. I'm going to do it again. I'm putting all the eggs into the Piastri basket. There we go. Piastri P1. I think it's going to be another Piastri and then Max P2. And then I'm going to go with, I'm not going to repeat what happened this weekend. I think it is going to be Russell P3. I think that's what's going to happen. Piastri, Max, and Russell. I think that's what's going to happen next weekend.
Good chat.
Mm-hmm. I feel Mercedes could have a good weekend next week. Or not weeks. Oh, it's not next weekend. It's 2 weeks from now. But anyway, so flop.
Come on.
Do you know? No. No. I'm going to break the mold here, folks, and this might get me the 1 point, and you're all going to get 0. I'm going to go Hamilton outside of the top 10.
Oh,
do you want to go for double?
Spicy.
I don't know. I'm going to say, do you know what? Because look, I'm an Aston Martin fan. I would love to see Alonso back inside the top 10, but I'm going to throw an absolute curveball here, right? And I'm going to say Behrman. No, actually, I was going to say Behrman. I'm going to try and I'm going to go Ocon inside the top 10. Boom, I said it. Ocon inside the top 10.
Not a bad shout, yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably not going to happen because we all know how Ocon likes to go. But anyway, Damien, what are your predictions?
I have Piastri in for P1, Norris P2, and Leclerc P3. I'm going with that Leclerc consistency again. I think the Ferrari is like Miami, if I'm not mistaken. And then I have my flop is Hajar outside top 10. And my surprise is Behrman inside the top 10. So, yeah, a bit of Haas love going through with yourself and Dave this week. I know Dave loves Haas, right? Biggest fan.
Yeah. I'm definitely breaking the mold this weekend. All of yous are going for Hajar outside the top 10, but I'm going Hamilton. That's going to get me the point. You're all going to get 0 in 2 weeks' time. Just going to wait for that. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. But thanks for your results, or not your results, your predictions there, guys. But anyway, look, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk Saudi Arabia, Jeddah, that absolute nightmare that I think, to be honest, will give loads of F1 drivers throughout the season PTSD because of those lovely corners and walls that love to come up pretty fast in them. But it was a great weekend. It was action-packed. But thank you so much for your thoughts and opinions this weekend. But yeah, but folks, look, listen, wherever you're listening to this, I know we're a day later than we normally put this out. But of course, definitely make sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section, wherever you're listening to this, if you're on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts and stuff like that. And of course, definitely make sure to like the podcast and share that love. But until next time, we will see you all in the lovely, sunny Miami. And Damien will be our F1 panelist for that weekend as well on Sky Sports, because she got to replace Danica Patrick.
If they want me, I'll go. If they want me, I'll go.
Adios.